I use Zotero to track every piece of content that I consume, whether it be a video, an article, a blog, but because I'm reading more physical books, it makes more sense for me to put the books inside of Obsidian, which is my note-taking app of choice. I use this canvas to remind me of what's going on, so you can see high priority, high, medium, and low, and then the status, which is reading, queued, and waiting, and if I move these around, it then changes the information on the file, which then changes them inside of this query. But before we get to that point, let me show you how this all works. By going to the settings, community plugins, turning on community plugins, I'm using a few to get this fully featured out. Book search is probably the most important one if you want to bring notes in quickly. So install, enable, go to the options, you can see we've got new file location, new file title. I can add that in now, I just want it to be title. So I'm going to select title, and now when I bring in the file, it's just going to be the name of the book. I don't want to use a template file. Service provider is just going to be Google, easy, preferred locale, well, obviously English. But the front matter settings and content settings I'll change a little bit later. Inside the files core plugin, I'm going to add a folder, call it books. Now inside of the new file location, I want to select books. So all the new books go into the books folder. Going into the settings and then going over to the hotkeys, we can then go to book. And I've searched for book, and now it's come up with these hotkeys at the top, book search and book search, create new book note, or insert the metadata. So I can add a hotkey to this if I want, but if we look over to the left side, down the bottom, we've got create new book note, and I can click this inside the ribbon. And now I'm going to search for a book. So I type in Harry Potter, it's going to search, and now it's come up with lots of different results, and now I can then filter the results again through searching. So I've typed in Phil for Philosopher's Stone, and there's the book that it's found, so I can click this. And this looks absolutely disgusting if you're not familiar with Obsidian, and what this is doing is bringing in all the information of the book that it's found. But I don't actually want all of this, so title, I personally don't want it. I don't want the author if I've got the authors. I'll keep category, keep publisher, keep total pages. Cover URL, I don't want two of them, so I'm going to get rid of the first one and keep the small URL. Publish date, I personally don't use. Description, again, I don't want. The link, I also don't really want. Preview link, don't want it. ISBN, don't want it. And ISBN 13, don't want it. But that is just for this file. When I bring in a new file, it's going to use that default and bring in all that information again. So I can come into the book search settings, go to front matter settings, because that's all that information, it's front matter. I'm going to turn off the use default because I don't want to use the default, and then I can add things in. So you can see we're using those curly brackets, a word in the middle, a specific word in the middle, and we can check the documentation for all of those, and then bring everything else in. Personally, I like capitals, so I'm going to change this to a capital S, add the two curly brackets, and then subtitle, and do that for the rest of them. Now I can copy and then paste. I can use the bottom right just to expand this a little bit so you can see what's going on. So you can see I've got the name of the bit of front matter, so subtitle, and then I've got the template information that's going to be brought in when I find the book. So let's just delete this file for the moment. Don't ask again, delete, add the book. I'm going to be more specific with the search this time. You can see it's come to the top. And now it's brought in just that information, which is exactly what I want. Now I want a canvas to add all of those books in, so Control P, canvas, so I've gone to the command palette to create a new canvas. You could go into the ribbon, click on the command palette, and then go and type for a canvas and create new canvas that way. So I'm going to call this library. Now I'm going to right click, create group. So we have the high, and this is going to be the priority. So I'm going to zoom out, hold control on my keyboard, scroll with my mouse. Let's just make that bigger. And a bit wider. Now control, click, and then drag, drop. So now I've duplicated it, we've got high. And after making all the grids, we've got high, medium, and low, and then reading, queued, and waiting. This could be something else. So my sister uses middle of the book, beginning of the book, end of the book, rather than reading, queued, waiting, because she reads like loads at one time. Now I want to add the book in. So I can do it from the file. I can click and drag and drop, and it brings the file in this way, but pushing delete gets rid of it. I can bring it from the bottom and then search. At the moment there's only one book, but if I type Harry Potter, it then comes up with Harry Potter, enter, and it adds that book in. That's how I personally do it, because finding it inside of the folder when you've got like 100 books in here is like very difficult. So it's just easier to do it that way. Now this is just me, but I like to be able to have two books inside of one sort of grid square, so high and reading. So if I move them across, I can have two inside of the section. That's just me. Obviously you can make it as big or as small as you want. Next, I want to be able to search and find all of those books without having to go through the folder system. So I'm going to create a new note. I'm going to call it to be read because I'm just going to have all of the to read books in here. and then going to add 3 dash lines followed by 3 dash lines, and this is the front matter information you'll remember from the other book. So you can see we've got 3 dash lines, 3 dash lines, and then the front matter all in the middle. And inside of this front matter, I'm going to add some CSS. This gets a little bit codey. There is a link to a template inside of the description which gives you this vault, so you don't have to worry about it, but I will show you how it works. So I'm going to go into the appearance settings, scroll all the way down to the bottom, and it says CSS snippets. I'm going to click on the folder, and that's opened up my folder. So Obsidian is currently stored in my library folder. I'm in the .obsidian folder inside of the snippets folder, which I've just opened, and I'm going to put a CSS, a cascading style sheet document, inside of this folder. If I double click, you can see this is all of the code, and this is from the minimal theme. So Capano, the developer of the minimal theme, has created something similar inside of minimal. So if you don't want to add the CSS, you can just use the minimal theme, and then instead of writing cards, write minimal cards. But I don't like this theme, so I don't use it. But I do want the cards element, so we're using some of the cards CSS in here, so I can turn this on as a CSS snippet. But that doesn't do anything until I actually have the query in place. So again, going to Community Plugins, going to Browse, and now I'm going to install Dataview, Enable, Options, and I'm going to turn both of these on just for preference, but everything else can be kept the same. And now I'm going to add in a Dataview query, so I'm going to put the 3 backticks, and that's going to create a code block. First, I want to explain what I'm looking for. So I wanted to make a table. I wanted to show me the author, so I'm going to type author, and I wanted to show the page number. I've brought up the book so you can see what's going on. So the authors is a field inside of the front matter of the book. You can see authors there, so it's going to look for the authors. Total page is total page. I want to be specific with the search because if you've got other things inside of your vault, it may show other files. So I want it to be specific to the books folder. So from inside of speech marks, I'm going to put books because that is the name of the folder. If you have more folders, so subfolders, you may want to go folder/books or however many subfolders you have. But for me, it's just simple with books. I want it to sort by the file name in ascending order. I'm going to type Dataview at the top of the code block. So now it knows to use Dataview, the plugin. I click out, and now it's found Harry Potter. There's the author, and the total pages is 0 because the book search didn't find the amount of pages. So sometimes book search doesn't find information, and you can manually add that in. So if I change this to 100, you can see the Dataview query will update. Now, I would imagine you'll want the cover, just like me. So I can go to the top right, edit this block, and I want the author at the top, then I want to show the cover, then I want the total pages. So, open bracket, speech marks, exclamation mark, so it shows me the cover, open square bracket, pipe symbol. I'm going to put 100 because that's the size I want the cover. If you want it bigger, put 1000, smaller, 50, you can choose. Obviously, work it out with the screen size that you've got. Next to the close square bracket, I'm going to open normal brackets, speech marks, space, plus cover small URL because that's where the cover URL is. Add another plus, and all of this should close it out. And I want to name this as cover, making sure I put a comma to separate it. So we've got a column for authors, a column for the cover, and then a column for total pages. So we then get the file title, we have the author, the cover, and then the total pages. If I was to remove this stuff at the top, you can see what it will do is it will change the query into the table, and then you've got the file, authors, cover, total page. But we're going to add it back in so we can actually see these as cards. Let's add another book quickly. Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets is obviously the next one, so let's just add that book in. It's brought the book in, it's just added it as a new file inside of the books folder. Let's go back to where we were, and now we have both books in. Oh, and it's brought in the pages as well, that's nice. So we can go to the library. I'm going to close down this file, zoom out a little bit, drag the file in, and we're going to search for to be read, which is the first one there. I'm going to make this much bigger because I have a lot more books than just the 2. So as the books are added, it will shrink. All these cards will shrink, so it's specifically sized for this card. So let's just add Atomic Habits, Becoming a Sports Coach, and another one. Let's go An Introduction to Ecological Psychology. So now when I go back to the library, at the moment I'm really zoomed out, so it's not showing me anything. But if I go to the settings, go to Canvas, and then change the zoom threshold all the way up, you can see now it will show me the covers. I'm going to push on the zoom in button, and now I have all these books inside of here, which as you saw on my version, they get much smaller as books are added. But you also want the cover and a rating to be shown in these books. So I'm going to get rid of this one because it's a duplicate. But if I come into this file, there is no way to show the cover because the cover's inside of the front matter. So I'm going to use a Dataview query to show it. It's a very similar query, but I've removed the ID, so I don't want to see the title. I've still got the cover going in as cover, and I've added rating even though we don't have it in the file yet. So when I leave, it shows me the cover of just this book. And the reason it's just this book is because in the from section I have books, and then I have the name of this file. So the copied and pasted the name of the file inside of here, which means when I come out into my grid, I can see the cover and then the rating when I add it. But before we get to the rating, I don't want to have to make that Dataview query every single time. So I'm going to use the templater community plugin to help me out here. Now when I come into this query, I'm going to remove the name of the file, add a smaller than %, tp dot, and then it's going to come up with the templater help menu, file title, then close it out. And what this is doing is it's giving it a template and saying, hey, look at the file title. So at the moment it's empty because it's showing just that script. But if we copy this, go back into the book search settings, content settings, turn it on, then paste, we now have the Dataview query that comes in the content of the file with this templater script. So at the moment the script hasn't been run. I'm going to manually run it, so I'm going to go to the command palette, and you can see the templater has a command. So if I click this button, it's going to look and it's automatically added in the file title. So if I go down, you can see it's added the file title. So at the moment we have becoming a sports coach in here. If I try and add this book again, so book search, go search, becoming a sports coach, it says error, file already exists. So I can't add the file again. So I'm going to delete the file, now add the file, and you can see it's added the file and it's already got the file title in there, which means the cover is already added. So when I come back to the library, the Dataview query is showing me the cover, and if I was to add this book, let's say I'm going to start reading it, it will already show the cover inside of the file, which is very, very nice. A small note here before I get into the fields is because this is a file, I can double click, I can edit the information in here, and how I actually take notes on books, specifically academic books, but also storytelling books, is just start typing in here. Now if I double click on the label, it takes me to the file. You can see I've actually typed in the file, so this is where I have my notes, but I don't need that. Next up we have Metadata Menu, which is extremely powerful, lots of different options. I'll leave a link to the video I did on the top right. But install, enable, create a new folder, call it class so I know what it is, create a new note in there. I'm going to call it book. Inside of the Metadata Menu settings, I'm going to go to the file class settings, select the folder that we've just made, so classes. I'm going to remove file class because I prefer it to say class, just my preference. Now sometimes Metadata Menu may not work straight away, so it requires an Obsidian restart. And now you can see I've got a clipboard icon in the file, on the tab, and then also inside the folder system. So I'm going to click on the icon, go to file settings. I'm going to change this to book, save. So now I've got a book icon on the books, which makes more sense to me. Go into the file class fields, and these are the fields that are inside the books. At the moment we have subtitle, author, category, etc., and some of these I may want to change, and if I do want to change them, I'll add them into the book class. After pushing the plus button, I want to add a rating field. I'm going to put this as a single value list, but it could be a cycle, a multi-list, it's entirely up to you. Add value, adding a star, and now we got a 5-star drop down, and we're going to save that. But this file hasn't been identified as a book class yet. So I'm going to come in and add something inside of the front matter, class, and then book. And you can see now we have a book icon. If I click on that, it gives me that rating option because it's not there. Because it's missing, I can say insert missing fields. I want it to go inside of the front matter, so I'm going to click the far right button. And you can see now it's added a rating option. If I click backspace, it gives me a drop down to select the rating, or I can come up, push the book icon, then click on the list, and I can select from here. So let's go 4 stars. So we now have 4 stars, and that will change the rating inside of the Dataview query, which will be shown inside of our library canvas. And because we're not showing the rating on side of this Dataview query, it's not going to show anything, but I can come in and edit the query. At the moment we've got total page, so let's add the rating afterwards, and now it's going to show the rating. This one's got a 4 rating, nothing, etc. I want to add another field and call it recommendation, and I personally add looking glasses or magnifying glasses, whatever you want to call them, as a trigger to let me know how many times a book has been recommended to me, whether it's by a friend or a YouTuber or whoever. I can keep track of how many times something's been recommended and whether it's worth reading soon or later. So done. I want a way to know if I've read the book or not, so I'm going to change this and call it true or false. So have I read it? Yes or no. Now neither of those are inside of the file, so I can click on the book. I can add them individually, or I can just click on the insert missing fields and then add them them both in at the same time. So we've got recommendation, let's call that a 2, and then complete. This doesn't come up with an option, but inside of metadata menu, you can click it and it says true or it says false. And the true and false can then be used inside of Dataview query to see whether you've read it or not. So going back to the to be read query, I'm going to go into on the Harry Potter Chambers of Secrets, add the book class. Now when I go to the book, I can then insert all of the missing fields inside of the front matter. And when I come back to the to be read Dataview query, you can see the book icon is there. So I can click on the icon and change the information from here. So this rating is going to be a 1, recommendation was a 5, and complete, this isn't actually real by the way, and this is going to be true. So I've actually completed this book, I've read this book, but because I've read it, I don't want it to show. So I'm going to add a filter, which in Dataview is a where clause. Where, complete, and then to say is false, you put an exclamation mark at the start. Now when you look at the query, it's not being shown because I've actually read the book. So the complete field is true, but the Dataview query doesn't want to look for true. If I was to remove this, the Chamber of Secrets will appear again in the query. So let's come in, let's just add that and say true, and again it will disappear from the query. So I'm filtering out the books that I've read from the to be read query, which, as you can see inside of the canvas, is exactly the same. You can click on the book icon and change the information. Now, once I've decided I actually want to read the book, I'm going to put it in my little grid over here. This is me. Obviously, you can change these as much as you want, but I want this to be flexible. So if I move this to low, the information inside of this book is changed, which means I need to add a field that's dynamically specific to the canvas. But as you can see, because we've got the file open and not a Dataview query result, I can't click on the icon, I have to go into the file. This is where I'm going to create a new file, call it priority books, and I'm going to use the exact same query, but I want to add something else because I want to filter not for complete this time, but for priority. So where priority. So if a book has a priority, it's going to show, which at the moment is none of them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to the window, I'm going to push the plus button on book, and what this is going to do is add another field to the book class. I want it to add a priority. I want it to update with groups in canvas. I need to select the canvas, so the library canvas. I'm going to pick purple. You can pick literally any color that you want, but I'm going to pick purple because it's the default and it's easy. Click save. Now at the moment it's missing, but if we come in, change the group color to purple, change group color to purple, and change the low to purple. Now, when I go onto the Becoming a Sports Coach book, you can see the priority has been added as low. So this priority field is looking at what group inside of this canvas is purple and adding that information in. So if I move this over to high, the book will now have a high priority. And then if I move it to medium, it will be a medium priority. But it's not looking at the reading, queued, or waiting because they are not purple groups. By clicking on the book icon, on the plus, I can then add a status. Updates with group in canvas. I'm going to use a green, orange, and yellow. Library canvas, and then tick. So reading is going to be green, queued is going to be orange. You can see it's already added in the status, and then waiting is going to be yellow. So now I have a medium priority and reading status. If I move it over there, we've got a high reading, so it will be high reading, and that will change for all of the files, so all of the book files that are added in here. If we take a look at Harry Potter, again, this one doesn't have the class on yet. So what I want to do is make sure the class is added, and all of this other information is added when I bring a book in, which means I need to change the book search template. Now inside of the front matter settings, I've added in the class for books, so that's automatically done. The rating is there ready, recommendations ready, complete is always false when I add the book, priority again, default, and status default, nothing. For this book I've already added, I can add the class, and now I've added the book class, I can go click on the book, I can add all of the missing fields inside of the front matter, and what it will do is it will update itself inside of the canvas information and say, hey, there's medium and there's reading. Let's add another book to show you what I've done. So Cognitive Psychology, another academic book because I read lots of academic books, and there's the book. You can see the status, priority, completion, all of this stuff is already automatically added. And when we go into the library and zoom into the to be read section, you can see there's the book, there's the icon. I click on the icon. I can say, actually, I've read this. When I tick off the red, it will then disappear from this query and it will not be seen in this board at the moment. So we have a to be read section and we have a priority books section section, but there's no way to edit the rating or anything like that inside of these books at the moment. So I'm going to add that to the right, add a new file, add the priority books file query, and you can see there's the priority books. They're exactly the same as the ones inside of here because they've got a priority from that field that we've added in, and there's the icon, so I can say, hey, actually this is a 2 because it was rubbish, and actually this is really good, so I'm going to add a 5-star rating on it. Little side note here, but if you have a heading, so say we put the complete section down here, I've just copied the query down, but if you have a heading and then you go back to the canvas, inside of the canvas, you can narrow to heading, but if you narrow to heading and say narrow to complete, because it's looking at just the heading, the cards CSS isn't taken, which isn't ideal if you want to use the cards. If you want to use just the Dataview query, great. But I prefer this view, so I'm going to add another file, use the exact same query, except the where is complete. And now we have the 2 complete books. And what I can do is then add another one, say complete, and now it's going to show all the complete files. And if I don't want it complete, I can come in here, go on the tick, so now it's false, so now it's no longer complete. It will disappear from that one, and now reappear inside the to be read. Adding a little bit of color because I like some color, so blue for to be read, green is hey, priority books, and red is I've completed these. But if you do want to change the cover of the book, so say it brings in the cover but it's not the right cover, you can go onto the internet, find the cover that you want, so let's say it was this cover, and then copy image link, go into the cover small URL or whatever you've changed the cover to, paste the link, and that will change the cover icon. So you can see now I've got The Hobbit as the cover for the Becoming a Sports Coach book. But you see the point. Of course, this is my library. You can customize it any way you want if you understand all the ins and outs, which is what I've done this video for. So let me know your thoughts below and maybe give me some book recommendations for me to add to my library.